Elie Wiesel's Night is just one of the most intimate and devastating pieces of testimony to ever come out of the Holocaust. It begins so quietly, in remembrance, but then it builds. It crescendos into this absolute howl of historical pain and, really, philosophical reckoning. And the incredible part? In barely 120 pages, Wiesel delivers a lifetime of moral weight.
So, in this explainer, we're going to trace Wiesel's testimony through 5 key stages. We'll start with the power of his single voice, then follow that journey into night. We'll explore what it even meant to survive the abyss, witness the final unraveling of his world, and finally, try to understand the enduring legacy of his witness.
You can feel it from the very start. Every single sentence seems to bear the burden of unspeakable loss, and every page is like a gravestone for memory.
This idea, this feeling of bearing an unspeakable burden, it's absolutely central to the whole book. It's a weight you feel from the very first page. It's a testament written not just in ink, but in sorrow.
You see, this book isn't just about survival in the simple sense. It's about what survives, and, just as importantly, what cannot. It's about the meaning we try to assign to suffering when the world, and even God, just fall silent. It's about the sacred, heavy responsibility of being a witness.
Wiesel's story opens in a place called Sighet in Romania. It's a peaceful town where faith is just woven into the fabric of daily life. And Elie, he's a devout teenager, just hungry to understand Kabbalah, to feel a connection to the divine, to live a life that has purpose. For him, faith isn't just ritual, it's mystical, it's a deep, personal search.
And then we meet Moshe the Beadle. He's kind of a guide, a mirror for Elie's own spiritual hunger. But that whole journey is cut short when Moshe returns with a terrifying warning. The Nazis are slaughtering Jews. And what happens? Nobody believes him. This denial, right here, is the first tragedy. This collective disbelief that a horror that massive could ever touch their own doorstep. Wiesel writes with such restraint, but you could feel it. Behind the calm words, there's a scream.
And from that communal denial, the physical journey into darkness begins. Just imagine it. 80 people, packed into a single cattle car. The water runs out. The air itself becomes a luxury. Time just stretches and then collapses.
Then you have Madame Schechter's prophetic cries of fire. They're a symbol of that ignored voice of warning. It's like a spiritual echo of how Moshe was dismissed. Hunger and thirst take over everything. Dignity starts to crumble. And it's here that Wiesel starts to show us, really subtly, how the dehumanization isn't just systemic, it's psychological. Fear clouds your perception. Denial just gives way to numbness. And in that space, cruelty finds a place to grow.
And then they arrive, the gates of Auschwitz. They mark an entry into a world that was literally manufactured to undo the human spirit.
Immediately, his mother and sister vanish. They're gone. Elie's father remains, and he becomes so much more than a companion. He becomes Elie's link to his own self. Then there's Dr. Mengel's selection. It's so surreal, just pointing left or right, life or death, with a flick of a finger. And Wiesel's writing here is just incredibly restrained. He doesn't embellish it. And that understatement, well, it makes the horror even more profound. It forces us, the readers, to confront that terrifying reality for ourselves.
At the Camp Buna, daily life just revolves around forced labor, roll calls, and random violence. Brutality isn't the exception, it is the absolute norm. Elie gets beaten for just witnessing someone else suffer. He watches a son abandon his own father for a few crusts of bread.
This system, you have to understand, wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. And yet, even in this hell, Wiesel shows us these tiny, tiny rebellions, saving a ration coupon, sharing a whispered prayer, just stealing a moment for a memory. As Elie watches innocent lives just extinguished, especially the hanging of a young boy, his faith fractures. A fellow prisoner asks, "Where's God now?" And the silence that follows, it's absolutely thunderous.
For Elie, this moment is a profound break. He writes, "My eyes had opened and I was alone, terribly alone in a world without God." His entire spiritual world had just been shattered.
And this spiritual unraveling is so central to the book. Wiesel's story isn't just questioning human morality, it's questioning divine justice. Is God somehow complicit in all this suffering? Could silence itself be a form of answer?
Then, in the bleak, bitter cold of January, Elie and thousands of others are forced into a death march, heading toward Buchenwald.
Snow is blanketing the dead, feet are swelling, prayers just stop. The only way Elie survives is by pure will,
by the rhythm of moving, and by his connection to his father, a bond that's now stronger than his faith ever was. He sees comrades just collapse, surrender, freeze. But you know, this journey isn't just physical, it's metaphorical. Every single step is a goodbye to the person he used to be.
Buchenwald. Well, it strips away the very last remnants of hope. Elie's father becomes gravely ill. He's beaten for being weak, ignored by doctors, completely abandoned by the system.
And when he dies, Elie can't mourn. The emotion itself feels like a betrayal. There's simply no space for grief. Wiesel writes, "I did not weep. I had no more tears." And those words, they're both literal and symbolic. To mourn requires a piece of your humanity, and in Buchenwald, even that was rationed. When liberation finally comes, it doesn't bring joy. It just brings quiet, reflection, a kind of numbness. From the depths of the mirror, a corpse was contemplating me. This haunting, haunting image reveals that survival isn't some kind of triumph. It's a terrible transformation. What lives through that kind of pain might not resemble what lived before.
So what do we take away from all this? Night is so much more than a memoir. It's really a profound philosophical text. Let's dig into some of the core themes and moral tensions that are right at the heart of this testimony.
Okay, so Night wrestles with some massive ideas. First, you've got silence. And we're talking about both divine and human silence and how that silence actually becomes complicit in violence. Then there's witnessing. The very act of telling the story becomes a form of resistance, a way to survive. We see those intense father-son dynamics where love and guilt are just pushed to their absolute limits as morality collapses around them. The loss of faith. Now, this isn't just about becoming an atheist. It's a radical reshaping of belief itself. Then there's the constant battle between memory versus forgetting, with Wiesel making the powerful point that to forget is to kill all over again. And finally, that core tension between the human versus the inhuman, that struggle to keep your ethical identity when instinctive survival is all that matters.
You know, the reason Night endures isn't because it just recounts facts. It's because it carves emotional truth out of silence. Elie Wiesel became more than a survivor. He became a vessel, a steward of memory, a conscience for generations to come.
And his words, they leave us to ask ourselves, what would I do in such darkness?
How do I ensure this never, ever returns? How can faith possibly coexist with atrocity?
And maybe most poignantly of all, what is my duty to remember when others cannot?